I have to ask because you mentioned that interview. You had a good interview with Benjamin Netanyahu after October 7th. And I've been very fortunate to get the opportunity to interview a few world leaders. It looks like I'll interview Vladimir Putin and others. One, I have a general question about how do you interview people like this? Maybe to put your historian hat on, of like, how do you approach the interview of world leaders such that you can gain a deeper understanding in the hope that that adds to the compassion in the world? So I have a deep sense that understanding people you might hate helps in the long arc of history add compassion to the world. But even just to add understanding is difficult in those kinds of contexts. And, maybe it's more useful to think about from a historian perspective of how you need to interview somebody like Hitler or Stalin or Churchill, FDR during World War II. It's not, I think about this a lot, especially if it's, 2, 3, 4, 5 hour conversation.
Well, there's a lot of weight on you when you do those conversations, isn't there?
From where? So, like, who's watching? Is it historians 20 years from then?
Who knows? I mean, the whole data might be wiped. I suspect there's a weight on you because every major world leader you interview, and you've done some amazing ones, but I mean, you presumably you have a set of people saying you've got to ask him about this. You can't not address this, and that's a very challenging one because, of course, although in an interview with a politician should not be supine, nor can it be endlessly interrogative, because you're not the prosecutor and they don't have to be the guilty party answering to you. And I've noticed the number of people who interview people, world leaders and others, who go in with a set of sort of those things, and at some point the other party can just I don't need this. And people criticizing you don't realize that. You just can't do that.
Yeah. I suppose why journalists behave the way they do, although I have increasingly less and less respect for the journalists, the average journalist. I have more and more respect for the great journalists as my respect for the average journalist decreases. Because a lot of the journalists seem to be signaling to their own in group. But there is a lot of pressure on people in that situation to ask what I would say is the dumb question. Why is it the dumb question? The adversarial question that the world leader, the person, is ready for. They've answered that question, and what you're trying to do is, I guess, one, to signal that you've asked the question to push them.
Yes. Yes.
Two, you're trying to just create drama, because really what people that ask you to ask that question, they want you to embarrass that person. They hate them and they want you to make them piss their pants or something, or just start crying and run out.
Walk out.
Yeah. Walk out in a way that it's embarrassing for them. They could be like, look at that pathetic person. And that reveals to me nothing except maybe the weakness of the interviewee, that they can't stand up to a tough question.
Yes.
But mostly, I'm starting. I have to do a lot of thinking, because you get attacked a lot if you ask questions from a place of curiosity that actually have a chance to reveal who the person is.
There's a very interesting line that Robin Day, who was quite a distinguished interviewer back in the day, said about Jeremy Paxman, who was a very interrogative interviewer in the UK. Robin Day, who was quite good at being rude to politicians, but carefully, said the problem with the new approach, as he saw it from the 90s of political interviewing, was, he said, if you think the person you're speaking to is a liar, you should get them to reveal that they're a liar. Don't just call them a liar.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that is, again, it's something that a lot of people sitting on the other side of the screen don't realize, is that it may satisfy them that you call a person a liar to their face, but it doesn't do anything, and it actually reveals nothing.
Mhm.
If somebody is a liar and they reveal themselves to be a liar, then that's something else. But yes, I mean, I hear you. You're obviously, you have a lot of different voices telling you what to do. It's also difficult because one of the things that I don't think anyone really understands is that in the end it's just you.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have this about Putin. Like, people say, I know exactly how you can, they could give endless advice. At the end, it's you sitting down talking to him. It's like everybody knows how to behave on the presidential debate stage, but only a few people have done it.
In person is actually pretty difficult. It's
very difficult because you've got all this weird behind the scenes stuff as well.
Mhm.
You've got all of the games that people play.
Yeah, with I interviewed Zelensky. I'm pretty fearless in general, and he was a very human and
Yeah, it was a good interview.
fascinating human. But there is soldiers with guns standing all around.
And you didn't have anyone? No one was packing on your side?
I had one friend, security person, who's also Ukrainian, so you never know. He could turn on.
You've been infiltrated.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't have any effect. And by the way, I should mention that because it's hilarious to me, but process wise, with Narendra Modi and with anyone, they don't. They said it was scripted and all this kind of stuff. I would never do anything scripted. They don't get to have a say in anything I ask. I have complete freedom. Sometimes you'll have people on the team very politely nudge, like, "Hey, can you?" And I'll very politely say, "Thank you," like smile. But that doesn't mean I have to fucking do it. I
Right.
could do whatever the hell I want.
Right.
This actually, by the way, with world leaders, it doesn't happen. It happens more with CEOs because they have like usually PR and comms people. They'll just be like very politely, "Hey, that thing
Yes.
about about when that sexual assault harassment charges they've had.
There's no need to
Could
bring
we just? There's no reason to really linger on that.
We
There's no,
don't have to do that.
yeah.
One of my favorite things anyone has ever said in a, it's only ever happening. I know a couple of cases of this happening in private. Some friends, a friend of mine once years ago was debating against this is before the war, the civil war in Syria, was debating something to do with the Middle East, and one of the people on the other side was the then Syrian ambassador in London. The then Syrian ambassador in London says something about the Israeli treatment of the Palestinians, and my friend stands up and starts talking about Assad Senior's massacre of the Palestinians in Hama, where they killed like 10,000 Palestinians in a day. And my friend starts talking about the Hama massacre by Assad Senior, and the big fat Syrian ambassador like stands up to respond, and he says, that is none of your business." And my friend was like, "Oh, I thought we were going to get into denial."
Let me just ask you one more thing about Netanyahu, because I also have the opportunity to do a 3-hour interview with him at this stage, and I've been, if I'm just being honest, very hesitant to do it, and I just don't know how a conversation there could help add compassion to the world. And that particular topic, no matter how well you do it, you do take on a very large number of people that will just make it their daily activity to hate you and to write about it and to post about it and to accuse you of things. In some sense, I don't want to lose the part of me that's vulnerable to the world.
People have very little understanding of things if they're willing to say that because you're sitting down and talking with somebody, you are ergo platforming them, advancing their cause, being used, being a shill or whatever like that. You might be actually just finding some things out, which I think something you do expertly. And another thing that your critics wouldn't realize is that life is long, and hopefully, God willing, we're both around for a long time, and therefore you don't blow everything up at the request of some twat online.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that a superpower of a kind is to identify the people whose opinion you care for and worry about their opinion and no one else's, really. And you just keep your own guiding light. That's what's always done it for me, is that I've always said I wouldn't care if I was the only person with my opinion and billions of people disagreed. I mean, I might be curious if the whole planet disagreed with me, but it doesn't fundamentally. That's not where I'll send you Churchill's great speech on the death of Chamberlain. I mean it. He says one of the most wise and brilliant things. I was thinking about it slightly earlier when you were talking about Zelensky, but because one of Churchill's greatnesses was his magnanimity. And when his great political opponent, Chamberlain, died in 1940, and Churchill had just taken over as prime minister, he could have used the opportunity. And we might even say that some politicians in our day wouldn't be able to resist the opportunity. He could have used the opportunity to say, you see, I was right. And Chamberlain didn't know what the hell he was doing, and he's led us into this mess. And you should have all listened to me. Because that would have been a good time.
Yeah.
It would have been a good time to say that. That would have been one for the win, as they say. But Churchill doesn't do that in his great eulogy for Chamberlain. He talks about how hard it is for mankind to operate in the world and how you can do it successfully. He very movingly says, he doesn't even mention the name of Hitler. He says what were Neville Chamberlain's flaws. He says desiring of human peace, to be seeking peace. And he says, and the curse that he had was he was led astray by a very wicked man. But then he has this great passage where Churchill says, beautiful resonant passage about how he says it's not given to men happily for them, for otherwise life would prove intolerable, to foresee or to predict to any great extent the unfolding course of events. And he says, in for one phase, men seem to have been right, and in another they're proved wrong, and then there's a different scale of values emerges. And he says, what is the worth of all this? He says the only guide to a man is his conscience. The only shield to his memory is the rectitude and the sincerity of his actions. And in effect, he says it doesn't matter what happens. If you have this, finishes it, he says, however the fates may play, that if you have this shield to guard you, he says, you march always in the ranks of honor. Because all that can guide a man is that. If you lose sight of it, and some people do, and maybe everyone does at some point, then it's a challenge. And then you get buffeted by the to's and fro's of the waves of popular opinion. But, and that's dangerous. But if you keep sight and hold on to what you believe, a million, billion foes don't matter.
Yeah, that is the path. We were talking offline about a great biography of Churchill. Churchill himself made mistakes and admitted the mistakes, and we can even say was proud of the mistakes. I mean,
Learned from them.
That's all the best you could do. The worst you could probably do is being afraid of making mistakes.
That's what TR said about them in the Man in the Arena speech.
TR. Yeah. The old TR. Those two have made quite a few mistakes, but are, in the end, some of the greatest humans ever created. Norm Macdonald, Churchill, and Teddy
Did we
Roosevelt.
do Norm? I think we did it before coming on air.
Oh, before coming on air, yeah. Well, he's always and everywhere in the air around us. one of the great comedians.